What if the most infamous man in history never died in Berlin? These aren't just rumors. They are claims that intelligence agencies secretly investigated long after the war. Join us as we uncover the story.
History tells us a very simple story. On April 30th, 1945, in a bunker deep beneath a collapsing Berlin, Adolf Hitler died. His body, along with that of Eva Braun, was taken outside, doused in gasoline, and burned. The ashes were buried. End of story. The most hated man in modern history, gone forever. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the official narrative, the one we've all been taught, has a fundamental problem? A problem so big, it leaves room for one of history's most persistent and unsettling questions. The problem is this. No one outside of the Soviet inner circle ever saw his body. Think about that. For the most wanted man on the planet, there were no photographs of the remains released to the public. No independent autopsy was ever performed. No physical evidence was ever presented to the Allied powers for verification. The world was simply told to trust the word of the Soviet Union, a regime legendary for its secrecy and propaganda. And when you have an absence of proof for such a world-altering event, you create a vacuum. And that vacuum will always be filled with doubt. Let's rewind to those final chaotic days in April 1945. Berlin is a hellscape. Soviet artillery is reducing the city to rubble, street by street. Hitler and his last loyal followers have retreated into the Führer bunker, a concrete tomb beneath the Reich Chancellery. The end is near, and everyone knows it. Then, on May 1st, German radio announces Hitler's death. The Soviets, who conquered Berlin, are in control of the bunker and everything in it. They announce that Hitler's body has been found and identified. Case closed. But it wasn't, because almost immediately the Soviet story started to change. First, they said he was dead. Then they suggested he might have escaped. This wasn't just low-level confusion. This came from the very top. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, told American diplomats at the Potsdam Conference in July 1945 that he believed Hitler was alive and had likely escaped, possibly to Spain or Argentina. Why would he do that? Why would the man whose army captured Berlin, the man who held all the evidence, publicly cast doubt on his own victory? Was it a calculated move to keep his Western allies on edge during the dawn of the Cold War? Or did Stalin genuinely suspect something was wrong with the evidence his own men had presented him? Whatever the reason, the victor himself was questioning the outcome. That's a massive crack in the foundation of the official story. For years, the Soviets kept a tight lid on whatever they found. Journalists, historians, and foreign governments all asked for proof, and they were all denied. The official line was that the bodies of Hitler and Braun were burned so completely that almost nothing was left. They claimed identification was made based on dental records, confirmed by Hitler's dental assistant who had been captured by the Soviets. But again, all of this happened behind the Iron Curtain. The evidence, the witness, the records, all were under Soviet control, inaccessible to outside experts. We were asked to trust, not to verify. The plot only thickens with time. In 1993, Russia finally revealed what it claimed were fragments of Hitler's skull, complete with a bullet hole. It was displayed as definitive proof. For years, the world accepted it. But then, in 2009, a team of American researchers, including an archaeologist from the University of Connecticut, were allowed to take DNA samples from the skull fragment. The results were shocking. The DNA was not from a male. It belonged to a woman, likely between the ages of 20 and 40. It absolutely was not Adolf Hitler. So the one piece of physical evidence that had been publicly presented for decades turned out to be false. What about the jawbone fragment, the one used for the original dental identification? To this day, it remains locked away in a Russian archive, never having undergone independent DNA analysis. So let's review the situation. The official story of Hitler's death relies entirely on the account of the Soviets. The Soviets themselves gave conflicting reports immediately after the war, with Stalin himself suggesting an escape. The primary piece of physical evidence they later presented to the world, the skull fragment, was proven to be from someone else entirely. The The crucial jawbone evidence has never been subjected to modern, independent, scientific testing. When you lay it all out, the story isn't as clean as history books make it seem. The lack of definitive, verifiable proof is what keeps the escape theories alive. It's not necessarily about believing he survived, it's about recognizing the official narrative is built on shaky ground. Uncertainty is a powerful force. Now, an absence of proof isn't proof of absence. Just because the Soviets bungled the evidence doesn't automatically mean Hitler got on a submarine. To make a credible case for his survival, you need more than just doubt. You need a plausible escape route, a plan, a destination. And this is where the story takes another incredible turn. Because after the war, it's not a theory that high-ranking Nazis escaped, it's a fact. Through clandestine networks known as rat lines, tens of thousands of SS members and Nazi officials vanished from Europe. They found sanctuary in places like Spain, the Middle East, and most famously, South America. Men like Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, and Josef Mengele, the angel of death from Auschwitz, lived for decades under new identities in Argentina and Brazil. The infrastructure for escape was real. The networks were sophisticated and well-funded. They had help from sympathizers within governments and even the Vatican. So, the question becomes, if men like Eichmann and Mengele could do it, why not their leader? If the rat lines could smuggle out thousands of wanted war criminals, could they not have smuggled out the most wanted of them all? This isn't just speculation. Declassified FBI and CIA documents show that for years after the war, American intelligence agencies actively investigated reports of Hitler sightings in South America. One FBI document from 1945 details a report from an informant who claimed to have helped Hitler land via submarine in Argentina. The informant provided a detailed description of the ranch, where Hitler and his inner circle were supposedly staying. Of course, intelligence agencies investigate thousands of leads, and most of them go nowhere. Many of these sightings were likely cases of mistaken identity or outright fabrications. But the sheer volume of reports, combined with the proven reality of Nazi escape networks, kept the possibility on the table. The trail leads us to Argentina, a country that, under President Juan Perón, was notoriously friendly to fleeing Nazis. Eyewitness accounts, though often difficult to verify, have emerged over the decades. People claim to have seen him, served him, or known people who protected him. One popular theory centers on a secluded estate in the foothills of the Andes, a place that looks eerily like Hitler's own alpine retreat in Bavaria. Is it possible? Is it possible that the burned bodies in Berlin were decoys? That the final act in the bunker was a piece of theater designed to allow the Führer to slip away while his empire crumbled? The story is compelling. It has mystery, conspiracy, and a cast of characters straight out of a spy thriller. But it also relies on connecting a lot of dots. It requires you to believe that in the utter chaos of a falling Berlin, with Soviet troops closing in on all sides, a complex escape plan could be executed flawlessly. It requires you to believe that a man as famous and recognizable as Adolf Hitler could live out the rest of his life in hiding without a single verifiable photograph of him ever surfacing. Ultimately, we are left with two stories. The official story, which is simple but lacks verifiable proof and is riddled with inconsistencies. And the escape theory, which is complex and speculative, but is built upon a kernel of truth. That the Nazis did have escape routes, and that the evidence for Hitler's death is far from airtight. The truth is, we may never know for certain. The men who held the answers are long dead. And the evidence that could end the debate may be lost forever or locked away in a Moscow archive. But the story serves as a powerful reminder. When governments control the narrative and withhold the evidence, they create mysteries, and those mysteries can haunt us for generations. The case of Hitler's death was never truly closed for the world to see, and until it is, the questions will remain. Thank you for watching. If you find these deep dives into historical mysteries fascinating, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Let us know in the comments which story you find more convincing. We'll see you in the next video. Did Hitler really die in that Berlin bunker? The official story says yes, but what if there was another way out? After World War II ended, a shocking number of high-ranking Nazis, we're talking thousands, simply vanished. They didn't just disappear. They were helped. Welcome to the world of the rat lines, sophisticated escape routes that stretched from Europe all the way to South America. Think of it like a dark, underground travel agency for war criminals. These networks had everything: logistics, money, safe houses, and powerful connections. They forged documents, arranged transportation, and provided political cover. This wasn't some haphazard operation. It was a well-oiled machine, and it worked. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, lived quietly in Argentina for years before being captured. Josef Mengele, the infamous angel of death from Auschwitz, also found refuge in South America and was never brought to justice. Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, was another one who successfully used these routes to escape his crimes. These aren't theories. They are documented historical facts. Argentina, under Juan Perón, became a notorious safe haven. So here's the big question that keeps historians and conspiracy theorists busy. If these vast organized networks could successfully smuggle out thousands of Nazis, including some of the most wanted men in the world, why couldn't they have smuggled out the biggest prize of all? The infrastructure was already there. The money, the connections, the political will to hide fugitives, it was all in place. We know that a U-boat fleet, Hitler's so-called ghost convoy, made a mysterious final journey to Argentina right as the war ended. What or who was on board? While there's no concrete proof that Hitler escaped, the existence and proven success of the rat lines make you wonder if Mengele and Eichmann could do it. The possibility that their leader used the very same system is a chilling thought that's hard to completely dismiss. Don't forget to subscribe and continue watching the video. There's more. In the remote south of Argentina, far from the noise of Buenos Aires, stories began to surface. Patagonia, isolated towns, German-speaking communities that grew quietly after the war. Decades later, journalists and researchers noticed something unsettling. Different witnesses, separated by time and distance, told strikingly similar accounts. A reclusive German man, heavy security, large estates, restricted access. People were warned not to ask questions. Locals described a figure who looked like Hitler, the same posture, the same mustache, the same rigid manner of speaking. These were not shouted claims. They were whispered, recorded in interviews, books, and documentaries. Some witnesses were hotel staff, others were farm workers, some were children at the time, recalling what adults told them to ignore. Supporters of the theory argue that consistency matters, that when stories align across generations, they deserve attention. They point to locations like Bariloche and remote ranches, where Nazi fugitives were later confirmed to have lived. They argue that if Eichmann could blend into Argentine society, if Mengele could avoid capture for years, then a protected, hidden Hitler was not impossible. Critics respond with equal force. Memory is unreliable. Time reshapes faces. Fame creates false recognition. A man resembling Hitler in a German community is not proof of survival. Eyewitness testimony, especially decades later, is among the weakest forms of evidence. And yet, these accounts refuse to disappear, not because they prove anything conclusively, but because they humanize the theory. They give it faces, voices, places on a map. This is where belief hardens, when the story is no longer about documents but about people who swear they saw him. But testimony alone cannot carry history. For the theory to move closer to legitimacy, it needs something colder, something official, something stamped, archived, and undeniable. And that leads directly to the most controversial element of all: intelligence files. Because years after the war, reports began circulating inside the CIA itself. And once intelligence agencies get involved, speculation enters a different category entirely. Years after the war, the story took a turn that made even skeptics uneasy. Intelligence agencies began to appear in the narrative. In the early 1950s, the CIA received reports claiming Adolf Hitler was alive, not rumors from tabloids, internal intelligence memos, field reports. Leads passed quietly from one desk to another. One document, later declassified, described an alleged sighting of Hitler in Colombia, under the name Adolf Hitler. The report included descriptions, locations, and even a photograph. The CIA did not confirm the claim. But they didn't dismiss it outright either. They archived it, they logged it, and they followed up. This is the moment where many people stop laughing, because intelligence agencies do not document fairy tales. They document possibilities. The CIA tracked these claims not because they believed Hitler was alive, but because their job was to eliminate uncertainty. If there was even a 1% chance that the former leader of Nazi Germany had escaped, it could not be ignored. Supporters of the theory argue that the very existence of these files is proof enough. Why investigate something impossible? Why spend time and resources on a dead man? To them, the answer is obvious. The agency knew more than it admitted. Critics respond with cold logic. Intelligence agencies investigate thousands of false leads, especially during the early Cold War, when misinformation was rampant and psychological warfare was common. A report is not evidence. A photograph is not verification. An investigation is not a conclusion. And yet, the discomfort remains. Because the files exist, because the questions were asked, and because no public document ever states, clearly and definitively, this was false. Instead, the trail simply goes quiet. And silence once again becomes the breeding ground for belief. For many, this is where the theory reaches its peak. When the idea moves from rumor to intelligence archives, it gains weight, even if that weight is illusory. But intelligence files still do not equal truth. They only show that doubt traveled far and wide. To end the story, something stronger is required, something immune to memory, rumor, and politics, something that doesn't speculate, but measures. And that brings us to the final claim, the one that confronts the theory directly, forensics, science, and the evidence that ultimately forces a conclusion. In the end, every myth collides with one enemy it cannot manipulate. Science, not testimony, not memory, not intelligence whispers, but physical evidence, teeth, bone, records that do not lie to protect reputations or ideologies. For decades, the absence of a body fueled speculation, no corpse displayed, no public grave, no definitive closure. That vacuum allowed stories to grow unchecked. But quietly, behind the scenes, the evidence never disappeared. It was catalogued, preserved, studied. In 1945, Soviet forces recovered charred remains near the Führer bunker in Berlin. Among them were dental fragments, teeth, bridges, metalwork. The Soviets consulted Hitler's own dental assistants, not once, repeatedly. They described in exact detail the unique dental structure of Adolf Hitler. The unusual bridges, the specific materials, the precise configuration, the match was exact. Decades later, Western scientists were finally allowed to examine the remains. In 2017, French forensic researchers conducted a detailed analysis of the teeth and jaw fragments held by Russia. Their conclusion was unequivocal. The dental remains matched Hitler's medical records perfectly. There was no doubt. No margin for escape. Teeth survive fire, teeth survive explosions, teeth outlive regimes. And they told the same story in every test. Adolf Hitler died in Berlin in April 1945. There was no Argentina, no submarine escape, no quiet life in Patagonia, and no conspiracy powerful enough to rewrite biology. So why does the myth endure? Because it feeds something deeper than history. It feeds discomfort. The idea that evil could simply vanish feels unsatisfying. The idea that justice was incomplete feels intolerable. A mundane end in a bunker feels too small for a figure so monstrous. So the story grows, not because it is true, but because it is emotionally convenient. Because mystery feels more meaningful than reality. Because believing he escaped feels like exposing a secret rather than accepting a conclusion. The CIA files, investigations, not confirmations, the Argentine witnesses, memory shaped by time, rumor, and suggestion, the submarines, real, but accounted for, the settlements, documented, but not his. Every piece that suggests survival collapses when examined under forensic light. And yet, the legend survives. Not as history, but as a warning that even in the age of evidence, narrative can overpower fact, that suspicion can outlive proof, and that the most dangerous conspiracies are not the ones that hide the truth, but the ones that make people stop trusting it. Adolf Hitler did not escape justice. He escaped imagination, and history, when stripped of myth, delivers a far more sobering lesson. Evil does not vanish into legends. It ends quietly, in ruins, surrounded by its own failure, fade to black,